10 days from our first LHSAA football teams officially kicking off the 2024 season, and Louisiana vs. All Y'all is now at the midway mark of our class-by-class season previews. Thanks so much for checking out the channel. Make sure you take a second and hit that subscribe button below. I'm Jarrett Roser, and I teamed up with a great group of high school sports reporters from a range of print, digital, television, and radio backgrounds from 10 different regions around the state to share their perspectives on the season ahead. Hopefully you may have already had a chance to check out the Class 1A and 2A videos, and keep an eye out for 4A and 5A outlooks in the coming days as well. But for Class 3A, we start in the 225 from Baton Rouge with the Advocates Rob and Fambrough down to beautiful downtown Vacherie, where longtime Bayou and River Parish aficionados Eric Richey and Chris Singleton join the conversation.
In 3A in the area, District 6 3A, you have the heavy hitters of U-High, Madison Prep, Parkview Baptist with Collegiate, Glen Oaks, Mentorship, and Port Allen back in the mix with those guys. Your thoughts on a group of teams that obviously those first three have recent dome experience and are all trying to fight to get back to it. What's the outlook in 2024 for some of those 3A teams around the capital area?
I think U-High, most people, a lot of people were asking about Catholic and Zachary in the preseason, at least like in the last 3 or 4 weeks. And as I pointed out to him, the school with the most current seniors committed is U-High. And that's not counting your Lamar Brown, who's an underclassman, and Emil Pecorello, the quarterback, is not committed yet. But, you've got guys like Zay Martin, the receiver, who's committed to Southeastern. The great lineman, he's really solid, John Abear, who's going to Navy. And, one of my favorite basketball players, Trishad Bush, I wouldn't bet against him having a breakout year as a wide receiver. And then, of course, you have Keelan Moses, the LSU commitment everybody knows. And, because somebody asked me about him, and I said, yeah, he's a great player. But you know what? The last 2 years, they've had another player who had like 150 tackles because the other team was running away from Keelan Moses. Last year, that guy was Alec Haynes, and he's back. Now, Madison Prep's going to be interesting. Calvin Spears or Nick Spears has a great football pedigree. He just committed to Navy. But Tylen Johnson, who succeeded Zion Chris at quarterback, it's kind of hard to believe, but this is his 3rd year as a starter. They've got Ross Ackman back from J.S. Clark as their offensive coordinator, and he believes that, Tylen can be in line with some of the guys they have there to have Zion Chris type numbers. Of course, now, to be fair, physically he's not Zion. He's about 5'9", 5'10". Zion was about 6'2" or 6'3", but he's very elusive and he showed savvy from the time he took over as starting quarterback. So yeah, why not with those guys? They're going to be interesting to see how, it's going to be interesting to see how they do. With Parkview, of course, you'll have a new quarterback, and it looks like that's probably going to be Logan Sorrell, who moved over from Dunham. And you've got some other kids in the mix. You've got, let me see, I got to make sure I get the name right here, because like I told you, I have a cheat sheet with notes on names these days. Brock Como had over 1,000 yards receiving last year, so that's a nice security blanket for them. And they always have a decent amount of athletic ability, a lot of kids that played multiple sports. So it's going to be fun.
St. James was, as you mentioned at the beginning, one of those teams that was so close last year to winning another state championship, but had that heartache where it was Union Parish's time on a pivotal conversion play at the end there. Yep. And the Wildcats have a lot of seniors to replace, a lot of leadership, a lot of talent, and they're a young group this year. But I know Coach Davis and company that those guys expect to be in that dome every year at this point because they've got an awful lot of young talent that feels like they're ready to surprise some people.
We all in our business, and you've got the terrific shots. I brought it up before we started the interview last year. Holy Cross, time expires, bomb, touchdown against John Curtis to put him down 1 right in front of you, right? You're in the right spot. Like when Puka, when they beat Acadiana in 2017, that was unheard of, right? Destrehan always ended their season at Acadiana, and it was overtime, and everyone on the planet knew Puka was going to get the ball in the overtime. And you try to position yourself, and I was, behind the coaches, and I got just such a money shot, right? I could see Puka, but I could see, Coach Salt and Coach Silva and everybody, getting so excited. So I did that same thing last year with St. James. So, the touchdown was, for Union Parish. They were going for it down here. So if they hold them, St. James wins. So I'm right behind Levante Davis. And thank God the technology, like this is as big as my camera is now, right? So I am like right there. And I got the opposite reaction of I just lost the state championship. So nobody's ever seen that video. I've shown, people at, my house, but I'm not going to put that out there. The worst moment of the season, but so close last year. And look, Braden Williams, man, you talk about a leader and was Mr. Everything. He was such an instrumental part of that offense. So that's going to be a big thing to watch this year. Ronald Barrio, who is a former East St. John interim head coach, and he has been at St. James for quite some time, sometimes offensive coordinator, now offensive line coach. I spoke with him earlier today, and right now the quarterback battle, again, is between two guys, a sophomore and a freshman. And the sophomore is he's a social media star, right? Isn't it Swaggy P? He is everywhere, right? Peyton Claymont, he's a sophomore quarterback. And the other one is Jawan Johnson, who's a freshman. So, I mean, these guys, slung it in 7-on-7 all summer. But according to Coach Barrio, this, we're going to find out, right? When you're lining up against a team like Hanville and, you're handing off the running backs. And, so that's going to be something to watch. That's going to be a key for St. James. When you lose a leader that was so instrumental and you got two guys you're not sure of, right? Either one of these guys could step up once the bullets start flying, once the games start. But right now it's a giant unknown for Coach Davis.
With, some of the teams that have jumped up the 4A. There's only 4 teams in the 7-3A district: Berwick, Donaldsonville, Patterson, and St. James. I mean, how do you see that quartet in 7-3A potentially shaping up as the season approaches?
Well, it starts with St. James, because, you look at, even though they're young, they're talented, and, they got some really good talent there. The other schools in that district may not have the same talent right now, but they got good programs. That's not saying they're going to be bad, but St. James is just that's one of those programs that just reload. They don't rebuild. Last year they made it to the Dome and they could have won it. They should have won it in some areas, but they just couldn't do it against Union Parish. But they lost some really good players. I think the quarterback play is going to be key for them. Losing Braden Williams, who was all-world, all-state for them last year. Kobe Brown was a great receiver for them. Having to replace some of those guys with some really new talent coming up. You may think St. James is just going to fall off, but they're going to be up there, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him back, in the quarters, semis, maybe back in the state championship next year if they get it all together, because Coach Davis is a really good coach, Levante Davis, and, he's had success everywhere he's been, I think from Scotlandville to whether he was in New Orleans area with some of those programs too. They're not going to accept, anything but success at St. James. That's just the program. That's just the nature of the business there. So I think they're going to dominate the district.
St. James is going to be talented again. Will they be talented enough to make it back to the Dome? I don't know that we can say that yet, but they always have talent. And whenever you have a program that's in that position where they've had success, I usually kind of give them a little bit of a bump to figure that they have a good chance at making a deep run again. I'd probably rank them first, but I'll be honest with you, Donaldsonville's kind of intriguing because you have Darnell Lee, who went over there from EA, and he's even told me this kind of reminds him of the situation he was in when he coached at Northwest, that the size of the school and everything else is very similar. They've really done a good job of getting the community rallying around them. Of course, they recently, in the last couple of years, got their artificial turf on the field that they share with Ascension Catholic. They've got a lot of good things going on, and they never have a shortage of athletes. I can't tell you specifically who might be a breakout player. I think, there a lot of stuff is being figured out there, but they could be somebody to watch.
That's going to be a game changer because I think Donaldsonville has always had talent, and they've always not recently, but I remember one year, a couple years back, they really gave it to St. James. Here at Nichols, they played a game here at Nichols, and they just dominated St. James with Coach Valdez there. That's a rivalry too, So I don't know if this year is going to be the year that Donaldsonville dominates St. James, but they're gonna make those games competitive. And Coach Lee doesn't, he's been around for a while. He knows what he's doing. They have athletes at Donaldsonville, and I know they do. Basketball, football, track. So Coach Lee can bring his system and give them some discipline. They can definitely contend for a district title this year. Barrick and Patterson are still, building their programs up. 2 years ago, they both were in the quarterfinals, and they lost a lot of really good players. Barrick, another year under Coach Mike Walker, and I'm just looking. They got 7 returning starters on both sides of the ball coming back from Barrick. And last year they only won 3 or 4 games, but they played some really close games, but just couldn't finish. So Coach Walker, he's looking to, finish some games up against, some really good teams, Patterson, St. James. And I'm looking at some of the returning players they have. Stephen Jones is a really good linebacker for him. Carter Whipple. Evan Crappell is going to be the quarterback. So Coach Walker does a really good job. He comes from that Tommy Minton tree, I think. He was a Vanderbilt assistant, a couple of years ago. So he knows what he's doing. He has established that program at Barrick. So the key is if he can just keep the players healthy and get some experience, and they can do some things. Same thing with Patterson. I know Patterson, that's another traditional program down here. Right now, they're just trying to get into just rebuild the program up under Coach Shannon Craig, and they only won 3 games last year. So Patterson, they have athletes too, just like Donaldsonville and St. James. It's just a key of could those players just come together with the coaching staffs, play pretty well, and I don't expect them to make state championship appearances like they did back in the 2000s with Kenny Hilliards and all of those great guys. But I think that they can definitely win a couple games here and set the tone for the future. But that district, in my opinion, starts with St. James, and they got some really good players. They lost Braden Williams and Kobe Brown, but they really one of the receivers I really like, Jacias Villanueva. He's a receiver. He's really good. I saw him with a kickoff return last year against Sterlington that really helped them get to the dome again. And just also, they got some really young players, but defensive back Jarrell Williams is really good. He's really physical and big. Jai Blaine, another DB, and a linebacker, Chaden Parker. So they have talent. I think the defense and the secondary is going to be their biggest strength, but the offensive line, defensive line may need to, rebuild after losing some really good players, and the quarterback position is going to be key for them. Who's going to take that position, this season? I think 2 really young players. So they're going to have to build that up, quarterback and offensive and defensive line. But St. James, I think, should be able to dominate that district.
And then in 3A, you mentioned Trey Mason now at Bastrop. Bastrop has an influx of some notable talent from other schools, including one of their district rivals there now in 1-3A, Sterlington, with the Downs brothers heading up to Bastrop. And so you got Bastrop, Carroll, Richwood, Sterlington, a lot of familiar teams. Haven't always all been in the same district, but they're together now with North Webster from out in the west half of the state. And that's another, with some of the movement there and Union Parish moving down and whatnot, it looks like a district that Sterlington should be primed to lead. But there's some talented potentially spoilers in that group.
Yeah. We used to talk about this district a lot when it was Union, Sterlington, and then Wasserman really came on. Carroll's had some really strong years. Richwood a few years back, but I think the district got a lot weaker. Union moving out, Wasserman moving up. So you would think it kind of opens it up for Sterlington. Here's my thing about Sterlington. You mentioned the Downs brothers. They lose Dylan Downs, going to be a senior quarterback. Devin Downs, fantastic athlete, baseball and football. So you lose those guys, and they go to Bastrop, and so they immediately make Bastrop better. We mentioned Trey Mason going to Bastrop. He immediately makes Bastrop better. Tank Washington's a really good coach. We saw what he did at Carroll and how structured Carroll became. That 2022 Carroll team, which was really special before they were upset in the first round, that was Tank's team. Like, Tank built that and then left right before the season. So that was kind of like what he was building towards. He's starting to kind of do the same thing at Bastrop if you're paying attention. Like this season, Bastrop has a chance to be really, really good. Now, North Webster's kind of come on. I think North Webster has a chance to be pretty good. But Sterlington, their issue is going to be, can they weather the storm? I think they play 4 Division I teams in the first 5 weeks or something like that. And so with a new starting quarterback, with some questions, they have to place a lot of guys on defense too. They could have some bumps in the road early, but talking with Lee Doty, he's like, look, we just got to stay focused. He's like, by the time we get into district play, I think we got a chance to be really good, but we're going to have a lot of inexperienced players playing early on. And so they got to kind of get their feet wet and get settled, get into a groove. And he thinks they can be really good come playoff time, which that doesn't surprise any of us. Sterlington's always, a contender. So I think that's, watch out for Sterlington late, but don't be surprised if you look up and you see Sterlington's 3-2 or something like that. That won't be a complete shock just because of what they have to replace.
It's always interesting when you have a team like that schedules tough and then has a lot of new faces. Just you mentioned weather the storm. Just see how those guys react and keep focused and not potentially get down on themselves or run into, knock on wood, any injury risks when you're playing a bunch of bigger, deeper teams and stuff like that. And so it'll be interesting to watch how they come out of that early season stretch. I don't know a ton about Bastrop other than some of those guys that have transferred to there. And I mean, you mentioned some of the coaching dynamic. I feel like from afar, they're going to put up a lot of points on a lot of people. Yeah. Is that pretty fair to assume?
Yeah. In fact, Dylan Downs himself was kind of hitting me up. He was sending me a bunch of videos of him throwing the ball and just a bunch of touchdowns, in practice and stuff. And it's like, I see you, man. I know I'm looking out for you. I know what to expect from you. But I think they're going to put up a lot of points. And like I said, Tank Washington's a good coach, and he's kind of built this thing up. And Bastrop's never. I think Bastrop's still probably, if you ask Tank Washington, he might say, we're still trying to get more people to come out and play. Bastrop's one of those schools where you have athletes everywhere, and they're roaming the halls. Some of them come out and play, some of them don't. So he probably wants a few more. But I think when Bastrop's like, how people used to talk about LSU and those Les Miles teams and how they just look different. I think Urban Meyer said that on Colin Cowherd before. LSU would run out, they just look different. Bastrop's always kind of had those kind of kids where, let's not forget that's where Lance Hurd came from, right? I mean, those kind of kids where he's like, who is that? I remember seeing him as a freshman at Bastrop, and I was like, who is that? It was a scrimmage, and they said, oh, that's a freshman. I said, no, I'm talking about him. And they're like, no, I know, he's a freshman. And I couldn't believe it. But they just have kids like that, man. But, yeah, I think they're going to be pretty good, man. Question is whether or not Tank Washington kind of make it all gel. I think he can. And, man, when you add Dylan Downs, Devin Downs, and Trey Mason, that's a shot in the arm if there was one. That's going to be huge.
Is North Webster where, I mean, the big note there is Coach Chris Wilson taking over that program. I don't know if you have had a chance to keep up with him at all since he took over. But I mean, any thoughts on him getting that opportunity and in a district that has Bastrop, Carroll, Richwood, and Sterlington? I know it's outside of your true coverage area, but he's a guy that's been around Shreveport for a while.
Yeah, and he hasn't been. We just talked about North DeSoto and their running game. He's been a run game coordinator. He's been he's had a lot to do with the success of the running game for the Griffins the last few years. But great to see him, local kid, getting the gig, another head coaching gig. I'm excited for him, and the one thing I know is he's going to bring energy, and I think all eyes are going to be on him just to see how it goes. I mean, at least to start. I don't know if he's actually gotten a place up there yet, but he was driving from here up there every day, and I know that takes a long time. But man, I could imagine what he's thinking about in that hour drive or whatever it is. and the opportunity that he's got, the kids that he's got up there. And, you know, he loves high school football. Even when he was coaching at North DeSoto, you know, he started basically an assistant coaching portal. I don't know if you ever talked to him about that, but he started that, you know, trying to get people all around the state jobs. He would live stream games on Thursday night when the Griffins weren't playing. The kid just loves prep football, and he's got another head coaching gig, and I'm excited for him.
In 8-3A, that's a district in your general neck of the woods, but a lot of it is more outskirts, and so you might not have quite the same level of detail. But I know, you know, an A-Meet program out there in Tangi that has been as talented in the 985 in terms of producing some D1 guys through the years as anyone. Bogalusa, Albany, Jules Sumner, Springfield, all in that 8-3A district. As you kind of hear a little bit about expectations, particularly for the A-Meet Warriors and just that district overall, what is kind of the buzz that makes its way your way?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're still the cream of the crop in that district. They've been so good for so long. The expectations there are, I sort of liken them in a lot of ways to St. Paul's in Tammany, where you just think you're always going to have a good team. You're always going to have a solid team. They're always going to be tough no matter what happens. And then they also happen to have ridiculous talent in many years, which makes a big difference. And I think they're still the cream of that crop. And like I said, in 3A, 2A players are important. So health is always a big factor in that district. Bogalusa loses a really big quarterback in Levi. Crutchfield does a good job up there. He'll have some athletes coming back for them. I haven't talked to him yet, but I will shortly. And that'll be the key for all of those teams is, can they stay healthy and can they get their skill guys in the right position to make the most impact?
Albany and Springfield, that'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. Generally, that is, you know, the Ameet district, although some people have pushed them the last couple of years. It's a big step up for Springfield. So I'll be curious to see how they do. But all of those teams are worth watching.
You have, I mean, a great group there, and just kind of listing through the teams to start out with: Bolton, Buckeye, Bunkie, Caldwell Parish, Gina, Marksville, and Vidalia. And so you have in that mix Bunkie that came on so strong last year. Gina has been, you know, a top program in its classification in recent years. Marksville, I don't know a ton about them in the trenches, but love a lot of the talent they have from, you know, skill position DB type group. And you got some great rivalries in that 2-3A district as well. You know, set the stage of what we should be expecting from the District 2-3A teams.
Yeah, I think this will be a competitive district as well. I mean, I feel like, again, Bunkie's probably going to be the best team in that district, but it wouldn't shock me if the other 5 teams like Caldwell, Gina, Marksville, or Buckeye may have something to say about that. It's just from top to bottom. Like you said, Jared, I mean, it's big rivalries between those schools. You know what you're going to get from night in, night out against those teams. Bunkie, obviously, with Dylan Compton, and then also Kyle Johnson, definitely is going to be the team to beat there. But then, of course, you got Gina. Jay Rourke has always done a very solid job with that team there, that even though they lose a guy like Zarek Jones, they're still going to be very competitive, and they're not going to go away anytime soon. Marksville's an intriguing team, obviously, to me, because now you get Devin Lavallee back from being out, missing his freshman year. Kid's a good athlete. He played basketball last year, but they were going to start him as a freshman last year before the injury. And I think that gives them one extra wrinkle there as far as like an athlete that can help them out, especially with Monk Pryor and then also Elijah Murray, speedy guys that they have there. And they're going to have a lot of speed out there on the field at all times. Buckeye, you know, of course, you lose Adam Broadnax at quarterback, but they have another quarterback that's willing and ready. And I think his last name is Grimmett, that's going to help them out as far as the season. He comes from the baseball field as well. They feel like that he can spin it pretty well. And, of course, I feel like with Aaron York coming over there from St. Mary's, they're still kind of going to do the same things as far as like throwing the ball. They're not going to go back to really the triple option and stuff, but they're still going to continue the pace that they have. Hayden Boone and also Jim Burlew, I think those are also 2 other guys that they're going to have as well. And then Caldwell, they're always an enigma here, but they always play hard. They always play tough. They have had a good offensive line over the last couple of years. You lose Eli Head, that's going to be tough. But I think they've always had a good offensive line. They're going to play good physical style of football. And, of course, the games that they always like to go up for is like the Genas and everybody else. And they just like that district. I mean, I know they're closer to Monroe, but they love that district. They love playing in that district because of the rivalries and everything. So, interested in seeing.
I love this district. This is this 3-3A, St. Louis, Westlake. This is my favorite district, and it's not close. When Iowa was in there, it was awesome. But, I mean, St. Louis, you've got Westlake, Jennings. I mean, it's loaded. Last year, it was loaded. Like, my sleeper team in that district is Westlake. Like, they can be really good. With Brody Anderson there, St. Louis is going to be an interesting one. With Brock Mathern leaving to go to East Ascension, you've got new Coach Dustin Knopfnagel coming in from Newman. What are they going to – they're going to be replacing a lot of guys. I think they're replacing 9 starters on the offensive side of the ball and 9 starters on the defensive side of the ball. So that's going to be another one that's going to be a little bit of a process. Again, Westlake is going to have some guys. Jennings is another team that I've got high expectations for, because anytime you can run out Rejon Zeno into your backfield, you're going to have a pretty good shot to win some football games. I'm just saying.
Is that the group that, I guess, as has been the case in recent years, you'd look at it in terms of the top contenders at a state championship type level coming out of the the Lake Charles area this year, that 3-3A group is probably as likely to compete on a statewide level as anybody?
Yeah, no. And look, and that's like, with the way the divisions are kind of shaped right now, some teams are put at a lesser advantage than others. You got to think about it with like how Iowa has, faced North DeSoto the last 2 years. That's just not a good matchup for them. It all just, especially in these divisions, and you're going to, this as well as anybody, it's all about the matchup and the side of the bracket that you can get on when you get to the playoffs, especially in these new divisions. But yeah, look, I mean, this division has got multiple coaches who have made a run at the state title. I mean, Brett Fuselaar Jennings won it at Kinder. John Richardson was at Welsh when they won it. I mean, you've got the coaches, like you've got guys with championship pedigree in that district. I mean, it's there. It's absolutely there. And there are going to be a lot of really fun teams in that district this year, I think.
There's a couple of districts around the city as well. I mean, you've got 9-3A that is probably one of the districts that I know least about around the league. Haynes Academy, Jefferson Rise Charter, Patrick Taylor, Thomas Jefferson, and then you've got young audiences not playing for district football honors. But I think from a statewide level, that 10-3A district is where a lot of eyes will be in terms of New Orleans area football in 3A, where Booker T. Washington, De La Salle, John F. Kennedy, Livingston Collegiate, L.B. Landry, and Sophie B. Wright all hail. I mean, De La Salle is one that folks around the state know. They've been in state championship games just a few years back. John F. Kennedy has come on strong in recent years, and even though B.B. Causey and some other guys have graduated, there's still a lot of talent there. When you look at some potential teams to watch in 3A in New Orleans, what kind of stands out about a couple of those and the potential that's there?
Yeah, you kind of just mentioned, the structure, with De La Salle, and I think that's going to be a big factor for them. I really like Ronald Cash at receivers. Another young receiver that we have down here is 2027. They bring their quarterback back to Evan Arsenal, so I would think that would help with some continuity. BTW, they still have a good amount of talent. Tashawn Smith is, a kid that's been playing for a long time now. Both sides of the ball, plays mostly receiver, but he'll get in at DB. D'Amico Barnes had a pretty good year last year at running back, so I think they'll lean on him a lot. As far as Kennedy is, another one. They got a good group of guys, especially at receiver. I think James Evans, big time player. He's been playing. He's maybe going on his 4th year starting. It's at least his 3rd year. And then Kingston Jones, who transferred from St. Aug a couple years back, he's another guy receiver that you kind of got to watch for. Landry, I know they're still kind of rebuilding. Hopefully my guy Nick Foster can kind of get him back up and running. I know just one guy to look out for them is Chris Griffin. He's another two-way kid, or two-sport kid, I should say, because he plays a little basketball too. But I think they're kind of looking for a pretty big year from him.
What's the landscape of 3A in the area, particularly, you know, if Northwest can follow up that great run they had last year, and what you expect from that consistently competitive trio of Abbeville, St. Martinville, and Kaplan, and I mean ERAF. I say trio, but I like a lot of what ERAF has as well.
Yeah, that Vermilion Parish group, has a lot of great guys. Obviously, you have Roderick Moore moving from Abbeville over to North Vermilion. You have, Abbeville having, a new head coach as well. So it'll be interesting to see what he's going to be able to do for that team. ERAF coming off of a 2-8 season, they're going to want to right their wrongs. And I think they have some guys back over there that are going to be able to, make something happen for them. I think there's just a lot of wide open, scenarios in there. Kaplan has Tank Latif coming back, and he's going to probably implement that wing T offense where, they're going to ground and pound things and keep the ball away from you and play great defense. So I think that that 3A is going to be wide open. And then, like you said, with Northwest, them going on that Cinderella run, now there isn't not necessarily, thinking that they can win. There's a belief that they can actually do it. And now it's just about going back out there and putting out a product that they can be proud of again.
Huge thanks again to everyone who took some time to share their info and outlooks on what should be another awesome Louisiana high school football season. Make sure to check out all of their work throughout the season, and make sure to subscribe to the Louisiana vs. All Y'all channel. I'm Jarrett Roser, and I think I speak for all of us when I say thanks so much for your passion and support of high school sports around our state. Thanks so much for tuning in here, and make sure to keep an eye out for the rest of these previews.